Competitive Pokemon to me has always been this mythical, high-skill world I'd heard about, but never really dared to try. I was more the catch-em-all kind of guy, the go of my Pokemon playthroughs. But as I was scrolling through YouTube one night, there was a video that stood out to me. It was a competitive Pokemon video made by a gentleman named Wolfie VGC, a former world champion in the official Pokemon video game championships, and a player who has redefined the competitive meta time and time again. Wolfie has this incredible ability to break down high-level strategies in a way that's easy for anyone to understand, even if you're brand new to competitive Pokemon like myself. This is what inspired me both to try out competitive Pokemon for the first time and make a video out of it. I spent a single week battling, strategizing, and learning everything I could about competitive Pokemon. This didn't mean I was playing for the full 168 hours. Unfortunately, life still had its demands and I had to balance work and other commitments. Instead, I tried to dedicate every moment I could spare to Pokemon, squeezing in games wherever possible. Along the way, I made plenty of mistakes, had some major victories, and walked away with plenty of lessons learned. If you're new to the channel and somehow find yourself enjoying the content, well, please do consider hitting subscribe, as it does help me grow my channel, and I would also appreciate it. And with that shameless plug out of the way, let's jump right in. If you've never delved into the world of competitive Pokemon, it can be, well, I think the word complex is an understatement. Base stats, IVs, EVs, natures, abilities. These terms are just some of the building blocks of not just a great Pokemon, but a great team. Think of base stats as the Pokemon's natural abilities, kinda like their DNA. It's what the game gives them to work with. For example, a Snorlax naturally has a lot of HP, while a Jolteon is naturally super fast. IVs are like a Pokemon's genetics. Each Pokemon is born with random talents in every stat, ranging from 0, which is terrible, to 31, perfect. So a Pokemon with 31 IVs in speed will be faster than one with 10 IVs in speed, even if they're the same species. In other words, they're just built different. EVs are all about how you train your Pokemon, or drug them. They're points you earn to boost specific stats as your Pokemon battles or trains. You get to choose where these points go. Want your Pokemon to hit harder? Well, put your EVs into attack. Want it to survive longer? Put them into HP. If you're already lost, imagine how I felt looking at all of this for the first time. You're telling me I can't just keep using, I don't know, Hyper Beam over and over again or something? With the nerdy stuff out of the way, I was going to need a team. Because, let's face it, I wasn't going to jump into ranked with just a Magikarp and Weedle. I spent some time scrolling through lists of Pokemon teams that have been used in competitive play. The idea wasn't to find the absolute best team, or one that had won world championships, or even had a 100% win rate. Instead, I wanted to find a team that felt comfortable enough for me to play. Or even find a team with Pokemon that I'd actually used before. After doing my research, I landed on a team consisting of Whimsicott, Miraidon, Landorus, Urshifu, Iron Hands, and Goldengo. It felt like the right mix of power, strategy, and a bit of personal flair. Plus, I was also excited to finally use Goldengo, who just so happens to be one of my favorite television superstars. I mean, Pokemon designs. Miraidon is the backbone of this team, and it's an absolute powerhouse. With its choice specs, it massively boosts its special attack, making its moves like Electro Drift hit like a truck. On top of that, its Hadron Engine ability sets up electric terrain, powering up its electric type moves even further. This makes Miraidon a deadly offensive threat, capable of nuking opponents in one shot. And of course, the stakes aren't as high if you don't feel attached to your Pokemon, so I nicknamed the team as follows: Powerpuff, Cheese, Only Hands, Future Lizard, Bless You, and Clitoris, because I can never seem to find this stupid thing when I need to. But without further ado... I spent a lot of the first day researching type matchups, abilities, and held items. I've been playing Pokemon on and off for nearly my whole life, and honestly, it's embarrassing how little I knew. Throughout all my playthroughs, I usually just throw out super effective moves against my AI opponent, and before I know it, the game's over. Before you even think about using a move in competitive, you have to consider a bunch of things. What the abilities of the opponent's Pokemon are, what they might be holding, what's the terrain like, and even what moves they might be trying to use against me. So I spent a bunch of time researching various teams, watching competitive games, and just memorizing a bunch of stuff. I guess if you want to make a lesson out of this day, it would be know your enemy. As boring as it is, studying what other builds people are using in the current meta will give you some idea of how to counter them. The problem is that sometimes battles do have a small amount of RNG involved, and unfortunately, you aren't RNGesus. The other problem is that you don't get to see opponents' Terra types, held items, or abilities, so while you may have some idea of what you're up against, you also have to adjust mid-game. Day 2 was game day. I started by watching more competitive plays and battles, and after so many hours, I had had enough. I was sick of watching videos of other players battling and wanted in on the action, which leads me to my next lesson. Play the game. When it comes to playing the game, there is really no better way to learn than actually throwing yourself into Pokemon battles over and over again. You'll be happy to know that my first few games were a success. I found myself reading into what my opponents would do, but also making small mistakes like trying to Encore into Psychic Terrain. I would throw my head back and laugh at such stupid mistakes, but suffice to say, since that first day, I haven't tried a priority move on Psychic Terrain again. I played a few more games without issues and ended the day at rank 6, which I was pretty stoked with. I would have loved to play more, but I didn't have much time and I was tired as shit. But then I discovered Pokémon Showdown. Pokémon Showdown is one of the best tools for practicing competitive Pokémon without the need to grind through the main games or worry about breeding and training Pokémon the traditional way. On Showdown, you can create a team, set the stats and movesets exactly how you want, and then immediately jump into battles against real players from all around the world. So I did just that. I copied my exact team into Showdown and battled a variety of differently skilled players. Until about 2 AM in the morning. I should include another quick lesson here. Don't be a f***ing idiot and burn yourself out like I did. Just don't do it. Trust me. Days 3 and 4 were all about getting my rank up, and just playing as many ranked games as I could. After my early morning adventures on Showdown, I was all of a sudden way less nervous about facing down my opponent, but I was starting to feel like there was one Pokemon that I needed if I was going to make this team even stronger. You see, I was running into a massive problem playing the same Whimsicott Miraidon starting lineup, Trick Room. On the journey to Master Ball rank, I found that most of the games I lost were to Trick Room teams. In case you're new to the Pokemon scene, this move makes it so that Pokemon with less speed move first. The only Pokemon on my team that was actually trained with Trick Room in mind was Only Hands. I had intentionally increased only his defense and attack so that he would be slow but hard hitting, and bulky enough to tank a few hits. So what was the answer to all these Trick Room teams? Well, my very own Trick Room Pokemon, Farigiraf, appropriately named Omnomnom. But this Pokemon had a few more tricks up its sleeve. Its ability Armor Tail is absolutely amazing. It's basically a brick wall for priority moves like Fake Out and Sucker Punch. Helping Hand is another powerful supporting move that boosts the power of your allies' moves for that single turn. This helped me take out big scary opponents, like this Miraidon for example. He was decimating my team, but with a Trick Room already set up and a Helping Hand into Blessyu's close combat, I was able to steal the game away from my opponent. With this change in mind, the lesson that I would say I learned the most over these days would be adapt and evolve. While it's great to have a dream team in mind and pour all your energy into making it work, the sad truth is, Pokemon teams are like a jigsaw puzzle. You can't just force the pieces to fit together, and if you do, well, the result is an ugly, disjointed mess. But if you try another piece, well, who knows? You might end up with something surprising and unexpectedly brilliant. So, with Omnomnom added to my team, I battled my way through days 3 and 4 and ended up at rank 9 with 35 wins and 31 losses for a 53% win rate. The grind to master rank continued, and as I steadily climbed the ranks, I once again started to notice a trend. Clitoris, while undeniably powerful, was becoming less and less effective in my team. His Searing Sandstorm just wasn't consistent enough for me to rely on. At this point, I knew I needed a Pokemon that was not only more consistent, but also disruptive enough to handle the physical attackers that were tearing through my team with ease. Enter Incineroar, or as I affectionately named it, Roar. Incineroar brought the perfect combination of bulk, utility, and support to fill the gap left by Landorus. What made Incineroar a better choice was its ability to pivot in and out of battle with ease thanks to moves like Parting Shot, which lowers the opponent's attack while letting me get a free swap on a fresh Pokemon. On top of that, Intimidate is just such a good ability, drastically reducing the physical attacker's damage output and giving me the breathing room I desperately needed. The rest of day 5 was actually pretty boring. I kept going win-loss, and I couldn't rank up anywhere above rank 10. I started getting a little tilted and ended up hopping off for the rest of the day because of it. So I went and watched some more VGC YouTubers in order to understand what I was doing wrong. Which leads me to my next lesson, self-reflect. No, you're not bad at the game. You're not bad at predicting your opponent. You're not bad because you missed a move with only 90% accuracy. What you're bad at is realizing that improvement comes with practice, and sometimes things in the game are completely out of your control. We wouldn't appreciate all the clutch moments like connecting a game-changing critical hit if it happened all the time. Forget about your opponents, reflect on yourself and what you can improve so that next time you face them down, you have an even better chance of winning. And if you lose again, honestly, just blame it on RNG. That's what I do. Like, take this clip for example. I mean, I totally didn't use a Psychic type move on a Dark type Pokemon. That was all luck based. F you, RNG. This was it. The final stretch. The finish line was in sight. When I tell you I've never played so much Pokemon in my life, I mean it. My hours blurred together as I jumped from battle to battle, grinding through endless matches, pushing myself to win at all costs. But for every victory I clawed my way towards, an equally crushing defeat followed. At first, I shrugged off the losses, telling myself that I'd bounce back in the next match. But as the streaks of bad luck and misplays piled up, frustration took root. I started making careless mistakes, misjudging my opponent's moves, going on the offensive when I should have played it safe. My confidence wavered, and with that, my strategy crumbled. The worse I played, the angrier I got, and the angrier I got, the worse I played. I felt like I was trapped in a never-ending battle, and yet, no matter how many times I fell, I couldn't bring myself to quit. The journey had consumed me. I wasn't just playing Pokemon anymore, I was fighting for something. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was proving to myself that I could push through, or maybe deep down, my stubborn ass just didn't want to admit defeat. And then it happened. After 47 wins and 45 losses, I had surpassed my initial goal. I reached Master Ball rank. More specifically, I landed at rank 10,950. While that number might not seem like much in the grand scheme of things, to me it was a huge achievement. When I first started this journey, I wasn't sure I'd even make it this far, but here I was, ranked in the top tiers of competitive Pokemon. Sure, I wasn't at the very top, but the progress I made from where I began was something I couldn't ignore. All the late night battles, the mistakes, the adjustments, and the learning paid off in a way I never expected. So can you guess what I did next? I completely tanked my rank, and honestly, I didn't give a f***. I was so over the same old team, especially this blue phallic looking thing that had been the backbone of my squad for far too long. I was itching to try out new things, to experiment with different teams, and to step out of my comfort zone. I'd been facing the same types of teams over and over on my way up the ladder, and honestly, some of them were just so much fun to watch and play against. I figured, why not? I wanted to experience the thrill of trying something fresh and just have fun with it, even if it meant dropping a few ranks. The biggest lesson I learned throughout this week wasn't about the strategies, the perfect team, or even hitting the higher ranks. It's about embracing the journey itself. Competitive Pokemon is as much about learning from your mistakes as it is about celebrating your victories. It's about pushing yourself to improve while still taking the time to enjoy the game and experiment. As much as I'd love to tell you that I came out of this week a competitive Pokemon expert, that's just not the case. I still have a ton to learn, but the point is, that's okay. Pokemon is a game that's constantly evolving, and so are we as players. The rank doesn't define your worth or how good you are at the game. It's all about how much you're willing to learn, adapt, and have fun along the way. So whether you're climbing the ladder, experimenting with new teams, or just having fun, remember that's all part of the process. Keep pushing forward, keep reflecting on what you can improve, and most importantly, keep enjoying the ride.